just going to read. Say to you that you're Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell, or the gates of Hades, will not overpower it. And of course, most everybody, they study that passage of Scripture, understand, because this is the thing we know, he changed, his name was Simon, but he changed his name to Peter, started calling him Peter, which is Greek for, or Petros, which is where we get, of course, petroleum, whatever, but basically Greek means rock. And for a while, people would say, well, he says, you're Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church. And a lot of people were thinking that he was saying the foundation was Peter. But that wasn't the case. What he's saying is, backing up to verse 13, he's asking him, who do you say I am? Peter said, you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. And that's when he said, blessed are you. The flesh and blood did not reveal that to you, but my Father in heaven upon that rock. That's the foundation of the rock. That Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. Okay, now, the big thing that we're going to talk about, next day, as he mentions, and that I'm going to build my church, and the gates of Hades, or the gates of hell, will not overpower it. And so this was the big question about the some people have talked about, well, there are churches that, are dead and gone, or whatever. Old data, 2014, Tom Rader in their research and study determined that there's 4 categories of churches. There are healthy churches, those that are kind of showing some signs of what he called sickness, very sick churches, and dying churches. And he breaks it down. Healthy churches and dying churches, 10%. So those that are kind of having some signs of some sickness, 40%. Those that are very sick, 40%. And at that point in time, like I said, 40% of the churches in 2014, and like I said, I haven't had a chance to really dive in and kind of see where, like I say, find out where his sources were, but he determined 40% amounted to 150,000 churches. So, like I say, 40%. So those that were sick and those that were very sick would have been 300,000 churches in those categories. So the thing is, the pictures change. Obviously, that's been 10 years ago. Obviously, it's changed. A lot of churches have died, but at the same time, we've had a lot of churches that have been born since then too. So that's just kind of give you an idea. Now, having said that, we still obviously are not out of the, I guess you say, out of the woods, because this last week I got the church is always getting a mail from a lot of mission groups and church and colleges and whatever. Johnson, one of our big colleges, Johnson Bible College in Tennessee, Knoxville, Tennessee. The president there, and of course, they're talking about needing, soliciting for some donations and contributions to the college. But he was talking about in the letter that what they're doing is Johnson is they're trying to get more students to come and get involved in preparing for the ministry. And one of the things that what they're doing is an incentive is they're offering to students half tuition. I think their goal is for like a 10-year period of time. Students only pay half tuition. But the reasoning is, and I had seen something talked about this several years ago, but obviously it's not gone away, because here's the president of Johnson Bible College talking about there's a problem that we have been experiencing, we are experiencing, and that is a real shortage of ministers. serving churches.
You know, the Bible college that Ben and Sarah went
Mhm.
to, they graduated debt-free.
Right.
Because they are the laborers all around the college. They do the work. They do some work. But that's the whole thing. Is why don't we put them in debt
Mhm.
and then send them out to serve.
Right. You know, and that was really a bold thing, and it was a lot of people were real skeptical about how in the world can you make, and I think they did. I think they've done pretty well. Moberly, Missouri, Manhattan. It's not Manhattan. It's Mid-South. I think it's called Mid-South Christian Church, Mid-South Bible College, whatever. Moberly, Missouri. How in the world they could do that? Operate a college and without with students not paying any tuition. Well, that was the thing they did too. They were relying on individuals and churches to offset that cost by donations, whatever. And I think they were able to do it for quite a while. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. I know that was a real. I thought it was a very admirable thing for them to do, you know, and that was the deal. And like I said, the issue is more and more pastors are getting out of the ministry early, and fewer young people are signing up to go to Bible college or to get involved in the ministry. And as he mentions, he cites, well, in his letter, the President Johnson cites several reasons. Bottom line reason why we're having this problem is because we've got basically a whole society of people that, when it comes time to think about career choices, it's this right here. You know, and they realize it's like you're not going to get rich, you know, going into ministry. So okay, well let me get a career. That's the thing. I need a career. I need a job. You know, that's going to give me the money, financial. Okay. So the thing is, obviously he's not going to talk about it in this, like say, in this about healthy churches. I mean, because he's addressing mainly he's wanting to talk about churches, dying churches. So the first category, symptoms of churches that have symptoms of sickness. Prevalent, and I think we talked about some of this already. Like I say, that's why I kind of want to speed through it, because there's so much. I think kind of like an overview of what we've kind of already studied, but maybe a little bit additional stuff. A prevalent attitude. That's what he's talking about. That, you know, in that particular congregation, everybody thinks about, oh yeah, you know, the best days, you know, in the past. You know, he talks about the good old days, and you know, when a congregation begins to kind of have that mentality, they're kind of stuck in dwelling on that. Wow, don't we remember the good old days, how it used to be? That prevailing thought, and the key word is prevailing. It's like, seems like that's, you know, that's all they can think about and talk about when they come together as a church. Oh, you know, don't you remember? And, you know, oh, how great it was, kind of thing. Obviously, decline in attendance, and one of the things I had to do a training, and that's the thing. One of the things that, he's going to talk about some solutions here in a little bit. But I had to do a training. Just finished it up yesterday, I guess it was. But it was actually about ethics on corporate levels, whatever. But one of the things they talked about was when they begin to notice the workforce, especially workforce in some of the management positions, leaving, they start going back and saying, okay, hold on, what's going on? You know, they start wanting to take a look at why are we having all these people resigning and leaving and quitting. you know, they get real concerned. We talk about inward focus, like say, you know, all we're concerned about is people that come. The no discipleship program. We get people baptized, but then what? You know, are we doing something with them after we get them dunked in the water? Are we doing something with those people after that? And then busyness. I had to stop and think about how you spell this, because there's thought about it. B-U-S-I-N-E. No, okay, that's business. Busyness with no purpose. And that kind of leads into the other book that he's got, like say, but I kind of want to look in and tap into some of that in the future, but a book he calls Simple Church. And that's where he's addressing, there's a lot of churches that, man, they got a lot of stuff going on. A lot of programs, a lot of stuff going on, but as he calls it, it's just, I mean, they're really, really busy, but it's not going anywhere. You know, it's like I say, it's no busyness with no purpose. So, solutions for the church that has stuff, just having some symptoms of sickness. Number one, pray for outreach opportunities. And for the leaders and the members to want to be involved in outreach. This is the thing, when we, like I say, praying that every single person that walks through these doors wants to be involved. Like I said, praying for outreach opportunities, yes, but also praying that everybody plugs into, okay, I want to be involved in doing that. Specifically, some type of outreach. Okay. Number two, and then assess member involvement. How many people are actually doing something? And you know, you talked about the church up, I think it was in Washington, you know, how they got 100% of their members. I guess you say, in a way, that might have been some type of an assessment. That was really that was basically cleaning the slate and then saying, okay, if you want to be a member, commit to something. And when they did that, obviously, then they could say that that was I guess you say, a type of assessment. Okay, we got 100% of people, members.
Well, does that actually discourage people from actually turning, and maybe there's a dead weight that keeps everybody back?
Okay.
Like in the church in Washington. So everybody's a member in order to be on the rolls. Now have to commit to doing something. And so they got 100% participation, but those that didn't recommit, were they just people in the pews, or were they a drag on getting things done?
They completely understood. They completely understood that, and that's right. That's the thing they try to communicate to everybody that came to church there. That that difference. That they obviously wanted everybody come to church there, come attend church there, but that's the thing they want them to understand is just because you attend church, you're not officially a member, and that is the thing that's what they did a really good job of communicating. If membership's really important to you, then this idea of committing to doing something, getting involved in some type of ministry somehow, some way, should also be important to you. And like I said, it was pretty radical thing that they did. In fact, there was a lot of other Christian churches around the nation who were just like shaking their head like, you know, I don't know, you know. It worked for them though. Like I had mentioned, that won't work for every location though. Won't work for every location.
I think it's the human side of that is some people do not feel called at all by the Lord to do much else except warm a pew, say prayers, be a good person, you know, be fed. That's what they feel called to do.
Yeah.
And I think that if you get an organization together that starts going like this, then
Right.
they'll just go, okay, I understand, and they'll go to there, and then they'll continue to be a Christian in their own way over there.
Yeah.
That's not to say that this group over here who's like all on fire and like going, that you must do, won't be successful, because obviously they're going to peel off everybody who are good attenders and, you know, just carrying the spiritual load. They're going to be like, you're not even part of this group, and they're going to leave.
Right. Yeah. The other thing too, of course, is that, and that I guess maybe also to kind of get also a better, more true picture too, when they talk about getting involved. I mean, so like I say, there's some of those list of involvement things were like clean the church, mow the lawn, you know, stuff like that. And that's the thing, you know, it didn't have to be going out and knocking doors, you know, knocking on doors, whatever. But that was the deal. That, like I say, so that's the thing. They wanted people to understand too. Involvement can mean a lot of things besides just you know. So that's the thing. They wanted them to understand. If you're a person that, okay, you come in and you clean it, you know, you clean the church, you're valuable. That's a very valuable thing. They wanted them to get that. You know, a lot of people might think, okay, cleaning the church is, you know, they wanted to understand, no, you are a valuable person. You know, that's an important thing. This church needs to be cleaned. Church lawn needs to be, you know, maintained, whatever. And like I say, they had to kind of help people to learn that and make that connections of how that plugs in and how that applies. So, like I say, maintaining a really nice lawn, how that, you know, what does that have to do with outreach? You know, they wanted them to understand is, you know what, if we didn't, you know, we just let the grass grow or whatever. You're new to this community and you drive by this church. Are you going to come? Yeah, probably not. I mean, you know, you think about all the other churches. The thing is, you see, churches, it's kept, it's maintained, it looks really nice. Says something to that person about, okay, those people must care. You know, they're whatever. Okay. So assess involvement and assess spending. What does our church spend money on? And that's one of the things. So, of course, we've got to pay the lights and all those things, but thinking about how much money goes into outreach kind of stuff. You know, and we've talked about that in the past. You know, do we have any types of publication type things that, you know, any handouts or brochures or mail kinds of stuff? Mailers, whatever. I mean, there's all kinds of things that, like I say, when we think about it, we're spending money basically just maintaining, or are we thinking about, okay, let's put some money into those type of things that getting where, and then the last thing, of course,
I just saying, we're not even listed as a church in the paper. You know, local churches, the directory.
Mm-hmm.
so I don't know if it's something we have to pay to be in the paper. You know, because they have listed all the lot.
There is a,
What's a paper?
yeah,
Well,
exactly.
it's more like a flyer, you know,
You know, it's interesting
we do get it.
that you bring that up. That Scott brings up a good point. Everybody's watched Shark Tank, I'm sure. Okay,
I've never seen.
never seen it. One of the things that, and I can watch some, I've watched a certain amount of it. After a while, to me, it gets to be a little repetitive, and I just kind of get bored with it, and then just don't watch much of it. But one of the things I've learned a few things about that world, and one of the things, especially Mark Cuban on there, of course, the guy, big billionaire from Dallas, Texas, and they'll have these people, and they'll come up, and they'll start asking them about, okay, you got this product, it's a really cool product, they're impressed with the product. Especially Mark Cuban will start asking about, so how do people know about your product? How do they find out about it? And one of the main things he gets real caught up in about, tell me the percentages of, because you got all these trade shows and all this stuff, how much of it's, are you doing there, but how much of it are you spending on and involved in online stuff? And the thing is, I think just because he has seen and he knows that there was an increasing amount of need for businesses to plug into that part. For businesses, if they want to really go big with marketing and distribution and marketing of their product, they're going to have to get it online. And Mark Cuban, that's one of the big things he gets real interested about, if he's going to invest any money or not. And when they're like, well, no, we just put our product on the shelves and whatever, he usually gets real uptight about that. But that's a good point. Newspaper. Well, today's world, you'll have some people. Oh, okay. But that's the thing. And the churches have got to, and the churches that are done well, that's what they've done. They've kept up. They've kept on that cutting edge of, okay, we need to start, looking at other ways of, getting out there. Okay. So, plan, and that's the thing. Obviously, a very important thing. So, and when we think about all these things, okay, we've got to have some kind of a plan. But this is where our leadership comes in. And start getting down and, okay. Because if you don't have a plan, obviously you don't have any direction. Where am I going and how am I going to get there? You gotta start having some types of plans on, okay, we want to assess, okay, how are we going to do that? How are we going to go about assessing people's involvement in our spending and whatever? So that all takes some planning. Okay, this is the church that has symptoms of sickness. Okay, and the solutions, he says, symptoms of very sick. The church is very sick. A significant decline over a 20 to 30 year period. Okay. So a church that's maybe starting to feel, having a little bit of problems, we're talking about a decline in attendance. This is the church that for 20 and 30 years, they've continuously had a decline for a long period of time. Prolonged times of apathy. People are just, everybody that comes, it's just, they're kind of like, okay, same old thing. And there's just like, there's not any, I mentioned Sunday morning, there's not any enthusiasm or excitement. It's just, we're just here for whatever reason. And I think this is the church where because of the apathy you hear lots of excuses. Well, I'd really love to, but man, I've got all this, I've got that, got this, and lots and lots of excuses from people why I can't do whatever. It's because it just, at the conflict. What happens is what they're saying is because of a lot of the things that's going on and a lot of these symptoms that's happening in church, all of a sudden a lot of times will breed conflict. Now we got people that are fighting, disagreeing, mad at each other. Who was it that was talking about the church where these two guys? I don't remember if that was here, but anyway, two guys that came to church for years, but it's like one would sit off and would sit way over there, and the other one would sit way over here, and came to the same church for years, but had not ever spoken to each other for years. Like I say, no, unknown in the community. As he mentions in the book, the guy, you go to the gas station, where's the Cass Christian Church? And he's like, what? Is there a Cass Christian Church in this town? New members are rare. That you got new people coming in. Is that a rare occurrence? In other words, is that a rare occurrence? Revolving door pastors. Churches that every 2 to 3 years they got a new pastor. Okay? And that's part of the, like say, usually come either because they've gotten so frustrated they quit, or they continuously get fired all the time. Okay? And we talked about this prevailing attitude about the good old days, that the good old days, for the church that's very sick, is the good old days are 20 plus years in the past. Was it good old days? It just, was like 5 years ago, boy, we really had a, hit a peak. No, this is stuff that happened a long time ago. All right. The solution for the very sick church. And his point is, before I move on, is that it's very, very difficult for a church that's in this status to recover. However, as he makes reference to the scripture where Jesus says, they were talking about the rich man, entering into the kingdom of heaven. Well, then who can? And Jesus makes the point, with God, anything is possible. And the point is this: even though it's a very, very, very difficult thing, even those churches that are in this very, very sick stage, reversal is possible. Okay. So the solutions: the church needs to confess and admit its need, whatever that is. And his point is there's a lot of the churches that are in that mindset, usually because of the ego stuff. They don't want to admit there's anything wrong with our church. We don't have a problem. There's no problem. It's them out there kind of thing. Just we're doing everything we're supposed to do. They're just not getting it. They're just not whatever. And being willing to confess and admit, what, we're not doing what we're supposed to be doing. Number 2, again, here's the same prayer, but this time it's the prayer for strength and wisdom to do whatever is necessary. The key on the whatever is necessary. Okay? And sometimes I think that, it applies to us even as individuals. Sometimes just have to eat crow. And sometimes it does take strength and wisdom to do that, but just say, you know what? I'm not right. I'm in the wrong. I got to do whatever it is that's necessary. Okay, let's do that. Be willing to make radical change. And he points out that this is the point of greatest resistance in churches. A lot of times. Time to make some radical change. And this is where a lot of people are like, no, not happening. Everybody's heard me tell a joke about the piano getting moved. You know, and the last guy, how in the world did you get it back over on the other side? 1 inch at a time. You know, I just, like I said, Larry Cowan's nephew, and I've done forgot what his name is, but he lives out in Arkansas, I think it was. And Larry called me up, this has been about 3 weeks ago, called me up and said, hey, I've got a nephew, was kind of worked in some ministry in a youth capacity, and anyway, for whatever reason, the church parted ways, and then but now the church is, like 20 years later, the church is contacted him and said, would you come and serve and be the pastor of the church? And Larry was like, would you talk to him? I think he really feels like he needs some guidance and whatever, and I'm like, yeah, sure, I'd be glad to talk to him. So I called him up. I think we talked on the phone. I bet it's a good 30 minutes, whatever. But, and I put him onto this book because that was the thing. He recognized the church that he possibly was thinking about going into was in this church that was in that kind of, maybe not dying church, but definitely kind of on a slippery slope kind of thing. And so he was going to grab this book and get into it and kind of look at some stuff. But we also talked about some advice, and that's one of the main things I told him is just be ready that if you're going to make some changes, especially in a situation like that, be patient. Got to be patient. Things won't, things won't happen overnight. I did tell him, this is one of the things I did tell him, I said, when you go in for the interview process, this is the thing that you're going to want to do is see that leadership. Where are they at as far as their attitudes about change? And if they're open to say, hey, yeah, okay, we feel like we realize we need to do some changing, then okay, you might be all right. If you go in, you go in and you interview with them and talk about, hey, here's some things I see that some problem areas that we probably need to make some changes on, and they're like, no way, then tell them, adios, goodbye. That's not gonna work. And he was, I'll have to say, he was very appreciative of that. He never thought about it that way. I said, yes, if you put if everybody puts all their cards on the table to begin with, right off the bat, before you even get started, it'll work a lot better because they know where you're coming from and you know where they're coming from, and if you all are in agreement, change needs to happen. It'll and they promise and they will commit. They'll stick by you, and you'll all be got each other's back on that. You'll make it happen. So the church has to be willing to make radical change and then change. So it wasn't just do it, as they say, to make radical changes. Now, when a church does this, essentially, and he makes a good insight here, is this church that was close to being on its deathbed, and they do all these things, and they make these changes, that congregation essentially becomes a new church.
That's correct.
So they become a new church, basically. All right.
I just went through, I told you this, you and I kind of spoke heart to heart about all this at your house. I went through this process of succession, right? Not succession, not succession, or secession, but succession.
Mm-hmm.
The people who are going to succeed you. And I went through it in the private company setting, this company that I helped to build. And I can tell you that the succession is something that churches should be keyed into doing as well. They should know that there comes a time whenever you need to be sowing the seeds of succession. You have to decide which seeds you're going to sow and what crop you plan to reap. Mm-hmm. And now if you take your seeds and just like sow them everywhere else in the rest of the world, away from your church, you may actually get some things that will grow way out there, and the church will not grow, because you're not sowing seeds.
Right.
If
Yeah.
you don't sow seeds here, you'll have no crop here. And I think that's why the Bible always uses the, agriculture as its example. It's always talking about sowing and reaping, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I can tell you this, watching that process in our company, right, and seeing some very wise guys, that were at the very top of it. There was 3 guys at the top, 3 guys underneath that, and then a few of us underneath those guys. Not many, and that's all. $6 billion a year company, right? Well, whenever everybody knew that secession was coming, it's 5 years in the future, right? And you start making sure that you do all the right steps to plant all the right seeds in all the right places, so that come 5 years from now, that crop of successful succession is done. Everything that's up here on the board is something that is a science, actually. It's a science of organizations and how to make sure that the organization is strong internally, and will succeed later. But I can tell you this, you're on the right track in that, and that has on the right track, the core nucleus leadership, in this case, that God sets it up where, elders and deacons, pastor, they come together and they get away from everything and everybody. I've seen this pattern done and it works. You have a weekend, right? Remember, we used to have retreats, right? You have a retreat and you shut out the rest of the world and you're not talking about anything else except yourselves, God, prayer, and this succession. What does it look like? Who are we? Where do we come from? And where is this thing going?
Yeah.
And you're doing it for God's sake, not your sake or anybody else's. But in that, you always have to know that this is all about the people that's coming after you, not about you, and not about the people that's warming the pews right now. It's about the people that are coming after, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, you have to be able to speak the languages and understand the intents and the desires and the hearts of those people that are coming after you. And you have to get all the things in place so that those people can attach to it and go, I got this. I can grow this. I can take this into the next several decades. Because the next several decades, that's not us.
Yeah.
That's them. And that's that change you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to get used to that idea. Well, our job is to get it into their hands, right? Okay. Then you have to say, well, who are the hands? Well, bingo, there you go. First task. Get those new hands, right? Find them. You know what I mean? This is something that it works and it's positive and it's great, and God can take it and go, watch me, watch this. I always like that idea that God goes, do you think that you've got an impossible scenario? Watch this, right? He can, and he does all the time. He just needs people to step up and go, okay, why don't you step in here with us and make this happen?
Yeah, Henry Blackerby, we did a study, and that's one of the things he was really big on, and he got repeated it a lot, but that's that concept of see what God's doing and then join him. Okay, so obviously, like I say, we talked about a church, got a little bit of symptoms of sickness, one that's very sick. We're going to talk about the dying church, and this is, like I say, this is the and this is the thing, the whole idea. When I thought about doing this series of lessons, it's like, this is what I want to avoid, kind of thing, obviously he doesn't talk about any symptoms about the church that's basically dying or it's just practically dead. But what do you do? The 4 things, because he talks about the 12 solutions. We already talked about 8 solutions. This is the 4 solutions for the dying church, and basically the main point is to die well. For the church to die well and to die with dignity. So, how do you do that? Number 1, give your assets to another ministry. So in other words, you decide, that's it. We're going under, what do we do? Okay, so like I say, the assets, he talks about, sell whatever you got and give to another ministry. This is one of the things I mentioned. And the second one, like it, is give the building to another. In other words, that could be another option. for this building. So in other words, we have another up and coming church, brand new group. Hey, there's a building, use it. And his point in that is the whole objective is, to further God's kingdom. And if there's anything that we could do to help do that for, like I say, this ministry's gone, this one's gone, but if we could help this other one that's coming up, and that's a thing that, brings glory and honor to God, because we're going to keep even what we've got, to let it continues to be used. One of the things, like I said, we mentioned about, we're going to have to get into our Constitution bylaws. I think I mentioned this before when we talked about the financial end of things. To be a 501c3 nonprofit organization, IRS does require organizations to have a dissolution clause. And our dissolution clause says, should this church cease to exist, what happens to our stuff? And it says all of our stuff will go to the SEA, Southwestern Evangelizing Association. Well, that organization doesn't even exist anymore. So we're going to have to change that. Yeah. So yeah, the board will need, and I think probably what we probably would wind up doing would be letting it go into a similar type of organization called the OCCP, Oklahoma Christian Church Planters Organization. That they basically do the same thing. They study Oklahoma and see, is there a church that needs to be started in that community, and instead of like a regional thing, because SEA was a regional thing, SEA Southwestern, just the southwestern corner of Oklahoma, and then they had one for the Panhandle area, whatever. They just basically over years they decided, let's just all combine and have one central organization. Okay, so give the bill, turn over the leadership and property to those who actually live in the neighborhood. And what they're talking about is that if the church was in a transitional neighborhood, so in other words, what they're saying is the demographic of this neighborhood was changing. And so the example he gives is maybe it was a neighborhood that predominantly for many years, as he said, was a white neighborhood. And for whatever reason, it's kind of evolved now, and this kind of became now more concentrated with like black people. And that's why he's talking about transitional neighborhood, turning it over in things over, to that group, whatever. That's one of the things that, and then merge. I guess, like I say, I can think about a church that I got to be a part of, Davis Park Christian Church. And here's the thing, churches don't have to necessarily, he makes that point early in this book, churches don't have to be down to like 10 and 20 people to be a dying church. Davis Park Christian Church, Enid, Oklahoma, that I had to do an internship when I was at Midwest Christian College, still had probably had a couple hundred people coming to church there. But after I had got back here, sometime after so we're talking about late 80s, maybe early 90s, Davis Park Christian Church and Oakwood Christian Church in Enid merged. And part of the reason is because they recognized Davis Park, even though they still had 200 members, that church at one time had 1,000 members. And they recognized, we're really on a major decline here, where we are a dying church. Let's join forces. And one of the things he mentions is that when you do that you let the healthy church take ownership, and that's, like I say, that's the healthy church, and they kind of be the one that, I guess you say, the steering, people that are going to be steering the whole ship kind of thing. Midwest Christian College in Ozark. It wasn't churches, but it was the same thing. You know, now that all happened after I was already out of Midwest Christian College, but you know, here's Ozark that had student enrollment of 500 kids. We had 100 kids. And all those people that were in leadership decided, they saw the handwriting on the wall, decided, you know what, it would really be much more advantageous if we just joined the two colleges together. And that's what they did. Our library, the entire library we had at Midwest got shipped up there, and we had quite a few professors at Midwest all took positions up at Ozark. Okay, now that's what he calls, that's what he's talking about, die when you die well, you know. And as he said, he mentions here, you know, we all hate to hear and think about churches that die. But I can't help, when I think about it, I can't help but think about the church of Snyder, our church of Snyder, the First Christian Church, Snyder, Oklahoma. That whenever I had the opportunity to preach Greg Ellis's grandmother's funeral there, some of you know Greg, Kathy, whatever, anyway, Bob's mom, Bob Ellis's mom, they had 10, that church consisted of 10 people, and not counting the guy, that he was just a lay preacher, that he grew up there in Snyder, and he was a part of that church, but you know, he was a lay preacher. But besides him, there's 10 people, and all those 10 people were ladies that were 80 years old and older. That was the consistency of the church. And it didn't take very long, that's the thing, for them to, you know, like say, to, you know, just close the doors, is because, you know, those little old ladies were dropping. I mean, let's say, I hate to think about it and think about it, but that's what was happening, was those little old ladies, that last 10 little old ladies were dying off left and right. The next thing you know, there's nobody. Okay, so my last question then, for us to think about, we talked about healthy churches, church showing a little sign of sickness, very sick, or dying church. What stage or status is Cash Christian Church in?
Pretty far down the road.
Down the road? Far down the road?
Way down the road, yeah. From outsider looking in, you know, not really all that much of an outsider, but it's been gone for a long time, come back. It's to be lovingly honest about it. We need more in the strata of layers, you know, of age groups and energies. It's missing, you know. The formula for the next decades is missing. Let's just say it that way, you know.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong with the spirit or faith or, you know, the folks that are keeping the lights on now and, you know, continue to do the thing. But as far as, you know, having an active plan and for God to obviously be moving into this building, you know, a new energy, a new person, a new outreach, it's not happening now. It might, you know, but
right.
If we don't focus on making that happen, it won't.
Right.
It's just not going to go poof, magic, somebody will knock on your door and go, hey, you know, I'm here to save the day. It might, but chances are it won't.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
That's the truth.
Yeah. I think we could definitely safely say we're not dying. Far from being a dead or dying church. We're not there. Okay.
We need a plan for the future
Okay.
if we're gonna say that we're alive and living and gonna be here,
Mm-hmm.
then we got a lot of work to do.
Okay. There was a couple of things that I noticed that that obviously, I mean, obviously we could check off the list as far as that doesn't apply. The very sick church, revolving door pastors, I thought, well, I guess that ain't happening here. Okay. I don't know, like I say, I don't think we can say that we're healthy. Not 100% healthy church, okay? So we're in the middle somewhere. Got some sickness or we're very sick. What do you think? Sam, what he's got.
I don't think we're very sick.
Okay.
But
Not there
we're
yet.
not in the healthy range.
Okay, we're not in the healthy range. We're not in the very sick. We're
Yeah. But you look at it, it's a sad commentary. 90% of churches in 2014 were less than marginally effective.
And that's the thing, we talked before, that also Barna Research Institute, that strictly did research on Christian religious issues. And that was old data too, but they surveyed and researched all churches, all denominations, all over this whole United States. I think they had, which was really significant, I think they had research results over what they call, I think it was like 500,000 participants, which is huge. Whenever some of these researchers can say that they go, okay, we got, they don't call them participants, they call them, there's another name for them, but anyway, like 20,000, we got 20,000 people that responded. That's normally considered really, really big. If you got that many people that would participate in the survey. Barna Research Institute all over the United States, 500,000 people across all kinds of churches all over the United States, and discovered that 10% of your attenders are doing something. I mean, they're running the show and they're doing all the work.
Yeah, 10% do 90% of the work.
10% of the people are doing
90% of the work.
and take a look at that. And 10% of the churches in the United States are considered healthy.
And just think of that, since that date, it has been publicized that as a nation, less than 50% claim to be Christians. Since then.
Yeah.
I mean, that was, I don't know what the percentage was in that particular year, but since then, it's been reported as, we're no longer what we could say, America is a Christian nation.
Right. Yeah. So, in other words, we've got our work cut out for us. So.
But the good news is I just recently was listening to Outlook, the younger generation, I mean, you're talking the 10 to 25-year-olds in that range, seem to be more patriotic than the Gen Zs and Xs or whatever above them. I don't even know what they categorize that age group.
Yeah, I don't know what the this next one's what they call it. I don't know.
And conservatives is where
Yeah.
you find healthy Christians.
Right. And the good news is that, like I said a while ago, those churches that are in the category of being considered very sick, very difficult for them to recover, that, in other words, I think we all agree, we're probably in this category where we have some problems, but we're not in that very sick category, but we have some problems. So in other words, we have ample opportunity to make those changes. And because in the very sick, it was
Right there, the 20, right there, our 20 plus years, good old days, that's a generation. We're talking about a generational change.
right.
It's why. And
Yeah. And this is the thing, he talks about radical change for the very, very sick. But just think about solutions for us. We are not faced with near the obstacles. So that's the good news. We've got a lot of opportunity to fix what we need fixed. And so like I said, the plan part, I know Scott and I had that big discussion a while back, and one of the things that happened was, and it sounds like an excuse, and it probably is partly, but we had right before COVID, we were starting to have the plan was for our leadership, elders and deacons, to start having some get-togethers, and then COVID hit, and then that all kind of got put on the back burner, and it really, it did really just kind of threw a monkey wrench and everything, but at the same time, I can't help but think about, man, it sounds like an excuse.
And one of the most useful things that we did in our company, and this went on for years, was cultural training, internal. What it had to do with was for the people who were in the different age groups, be it boomers, those of us that were, founders and started the company, or the, millennials, Gen Z, Gen X, and, down the line, to go through some very serious training and went on for a long time, for every age group to really come to grips with the fact of just how differently they view the world, understand the world, and communicate. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why that was so important was for the folks that were in the boomers, the older guys that were started it all, and those just under them, it was really important for them to be able to get outside of themselves and to really start thinking in terms of these people that I'm just now really truly looking at from their eyes, the way they see the world. I need to start thinking about the world and coming up where it's not me, it's not about me and my accomplishments. It's not about what the company that I built. It's about the company they're going to build, right? And the same thing is true for a church organization. Our efforts has to be, when we start thinking and seeing ourselves, we have to envision, you have to envision what this next leader of the church looks like. Who is he? What's he look like? What kind of dynamics does he bring? And the same for every one of us, that we start thinking more in terms of like the person that I want to, hand off what I know and to be able to assist so that they can get up to speed and enjoy this. It's about that more than it's about the doing that we're talking about. We always fall back to there's 10% doers and 9%, enjoyers. And that's probably that ratio is probably going to continue but you got to find your new doers, right? You got to find those guys that are going to come in and go, I love this, I've got this, this is all that I asked for. You give me this and I'll take it from there. That's our job, especially our job as older folks or elders. Our job is to go, I'm going to try and keep you out of the ditches. You will make mistakes. I did, and we're going to give you a good start on this. And I want to see you take off and roll. Letting go is not easy.
Yeah.
And that's actually part of the reason why I retired early, because it actually was beneficial for them. And I trained a whole group of guys, a whole part of the company that didn't exist before, and it was better for them that I wasn't there. It was better for me to leave, because at that point in the game, they're like, shoot, we have to do this now.
Right.
And you're like going, and they're like, we're not ready. And I had to tell them, you are ready. You're more than ready. It's not that you know everything, but you're ready to start to really learn and do it.
Yep. All right, so we're gonna, like I say, stuff we need to think about, because guess what? You know what? We're gonna be voting again, leadership, 1st of June. And I think this is stuff we need to really just nail down and start working on and get it all.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Yeah. All right. Prayer concerns we need to be in prayer for. Seems like there's.
Bob's friend, had a heart attack.
Who?
Bob's friend.
Oh yeah, Bob's friend. I can't think what
I
his,
posted that today.
can't think what his name.
Yeah, it's on the Facebook.
Yeah, seemed like there's somebody else that I can't think.